Hardcore Wrestling Radio. In HWR, we may not drop a lot of pipe bombs, but we sure as hell drop a lot of F-bombs. So don't say you weren't warned.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a special news bits here on Hardcore Wrestling Radio. This is Will, aka the MVP of the Bay, and of course now we're now splitter than a pizza. Why you say split? Because I'm with now my two correspondents now for this news bits. Starting with, he's from that Big Easy. He's James, aka the Twitter God. James, what you got for us?
Hashtag Team Dixie. What the hell?
Hashtag Team Dixie. And of course...
Why is this trending on Twitter? Anyway, go on.
And of course, over there in that groovy state of Tennessee, we got Lance Boss from YouTube.com. Lance, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. Let's get after this.
Alright. Today, folks, here at Hardcore Wrestling Radio, we have your news for October 2nd, 2013, and we are going to kick it off with Hulk Hogan possibly leaving TNA. There has been several reports saying that this could be Hogan's swan song, as many to believe that he may go back to the WWE for WrestleMania 30. So, James, the question is this really a swan song for him to go back to WWE, or what are your thoughts?
Well, here's an interesting note I found on Twitter because you are calling me the Twitter God. Here's the report. I don't know if it's true or not, but that's just something I found on Twitter. Hulk Hogan's contract has reportedly expired, as we obviously know that part. TNA wants to give Hogan a pay cut. They want Hogan to take a pay cut. He's basically earning right now $30,000 for every TNA appearance. And I think for Hogan, I would suggest just going back to WWE, because TNA financially is not up to settle. If they want you to take a pay cut, just leave. If it's all about the money, just leave. Don't deal with TNA anymore. TNA is basically a Titanic right now. It's just, and I think Hogan, I see him more on an appearance than doing something at WrestleMania 30.
Okay, Lance, now with everything in perspective, several sites are saying that Hogan supposedly quits TNA. So my question to you, my friend, is do you see Hogan staying in TNA, or is he going to jump ship to the WWE for WrestleMania 30? Give us your thoughts on this.
Well, TNA needs him to jump ship because, like I say, it's a Titanic. That would be a partial patch-up for him because it'll free up a lot of money. And I can legitimately see Vince making a call down to Hulk and saying, hey, we need you for 30.
Yeah. I mean, there's a similar thing along the lines of maybe he will go back to WWE because, I've noticed Hogan's been bitter on his face since his daughter left the company, and, the upper echelon at TNA just didn't like the way that Brooke didn't supposedly hold her job, successfully as the president of the Knockouts or whatsoever. And I think TNA made the right call. Hogan should even be bitter in the first place. I mean, you love your daughter, but this is a joke. I mean, Hogan to WrestleMania 30, back to the WWE, only for an appearance. No more wrestling, no more sponsoring your shoes. Who cares? I mean, you revolutionized wrestling, but that is just about it. I mean, there should be nothing else for you to do. Just make an appearance, get your check, shake hands, that's it.
I have a match for Hogan at WrestleMania. Hogan versus Fandango, the battle of the guys who can't wrestle but have awesome leg drops.
Top rope versus running leg drop. Has Lance picked up something, folks? We'll find out. Now,
not.
And next we have here in our News Bits segment, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Anderson, that's right, Ken Anderson returning to TNA. It has been said on a recent edition of Fourth and Pain that he's not currently signed back to TNA, but sources are saying that he's going to resign to the company within a week. And there's also been talks from his agent and lawyer that are trying to finish up a new deal for him to stay in TNA. So, Lance, my question to you is, now that Anderson was on a wrestling show, his lawyer and his agent are trying to make a new deal, where do you think Anderson should be? In TNA or going back to WWE to patch things up?
Honestly, somebody hit Vince McMahon's music because there's no chance in hell of him going back to WWE. From what I've heard, he was just taking some time off to be with his wife while she was having a kid or something. So I'm saying TNA.
So you would most likely want him to stay.
Yeah, because I've heard he has a lot of heat with the big guys in WWE, so probably ain't going to happen.
I agree. Now, to you, James, my question to you is, there were sources saying that he not being affiliated with TNA hasn't really crossed his mind. And he is also in the works of taking some independent dates. So he was considering taking some shots at the indies. So my question to you is, if he doesn't sign with either company, do you see him going back to the indie circuit for a while until a company as big as maybe Ring of Honor would take him in? Give us your thoughts.
I mean, it really depends on how he feels. If he feels like he could do independence again, then I'm open to seeing him maybe do some independence circuits. But as what Lance said, I don't see Mr. Anderson or Kennedy or whatever we want to call him going back to WWE. He's not gonna patch things up with Triple H and all of them. And the fact is that TNA is his only chance, because TNA is the only company that made him like a top star, you know. Even though WWE kind of did, but they kind of dropped the ball with him too. But I feel like TNA would be the best thing for him to do, if not just do independence. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to agree with both of you on this one. And here's my thoughts about this. I mean, yeah, he burned the bridge in WWE for that spot back in 2009 or 10. I forgot which year it was, when he injured Orton in that 5-on-5 tag. Orton went to go complain to Vince, and Triple H had his say, blah, blah, blah. He was released, and he was ever up again. Nobody thought he was going to jump to TNA. I mean, I remember his debut against Abyss, and the crowd was ever so livid. But I'm on the bandwagon with you guys. I don't see him back at WWE. I do see him back in TNA, but the way that TNA has been going lately financially and image brand-wise, if all goes to shit, and yes, HWR folks, there ain't no filter here, I could probably see him going back to the indie circuit and maybe, I don't know, TCW. I don't see him in Ring of Honor. Maybe in a company respect or utilize from his talents. But WWE won't take him back, and if TNA's going into shit, then there you go. But that has yet to be seen. And now next we have Glenn Jacobs, as which we know as Kane, has recently appeared on the Ron Paul channel. Yippee! Politics, hooray! Anyway,
We're all screwed.
to discuss the push by the Federal Drug Association, which is the FDA, to have more regulations over pharmacies. And we all know that Glenn Jacobs is a libertarian, and he sees to show an interest for running for the Senate in Lance's state of Tennessee next year, possibly. So, Lance, you being from Tennessee, my question to you is, with Kane backing up Ron Paul, do you think it's wise for him, after he retires wrestling, to run for office?
Well, crazier wrestlers have won office in this country, so I don't see a problem. Why not? I mean, in this country, we did have a governor under the name of Ventura.
Yes, that's
So I
just
think, why not?
Body Ventura. As Lance goes quiet, well, see, here's the thing about it too. I mean, I never knew wrestlers to be politicians like that, but in a recent interview with HWR, we knew that the B. Brian Blair is a politician out in Florida, but
Yeah.
you guys already knew about that, so yeah. Now, James, my question to you is, do you think this is the right move for Kane after he retires professional wrestling? Do you think politics is for him, or is this a bad career choice when he leaves professional wrestling?
Really, I can't really. I'm not like a person to talk politics. It's just something. If he feels that he wants to be a politician, then sure, go for it. I mean, I don't mind it, but you do it right after you retire. I think it might be the time that he may like settle down. Maybe he's done. Okay, I'm gonna retire after this year. But right now it's like I don't know. Can't really say much on that issue.
All right, and here's my thoughts about that. I mean, wrestling and politics. Does the words Linda McMahon tried to run mean anything to anybody? Does the phrase she failed out and didn't get much mean anything to anybody?
I'm just gonna say, as long as he don't spend that much money like Linda McMahon did, he'd be fine.
Yeah, because everybody knows in politics, money and power are going to be involved in some type of point.
Personally, I think Katie Vick's going to show up as soon as he tries to, but then again, there you go.
Oh, God. Lance would have to say Katie Vick. Now, more to my thoughts. I mean, I don't like politics. I don't like speaking about politics. And I will never take a liking to politics ever. But, this is something that, if Kane or Glenn Jacobs, for that matter, wants to get into this field of business, then okay. But the thing is, Lance did have a point here, ladies and gentlemen. You don't want to mix the many things of it, because if you're going to be hurt with a campaign that's going to hurt your image and financially in dire straits, this is going to be very, very, very bad for you. And I mean, we had sports with politics. We had government in politics. And now we just got people thinking that, I guess, the upper hand of it all is supposed to help. I don't think this is going to work out per se, but, we don't like to judge over one another, but, you have your choice. And now we have a couple more things here on the HWR News Bits. Lance, I understand that you want to talk about the shirts that were worn on last Monday's Monday Night Raw.
Okay, we all know that WWE has a affiliation or is sponsoring or is making some sort of donations to the Susan G. Komen for the Cure charity, right?
That is correct.
Well, I got no problem with that. What I do got a problem with, okay, 75 to 80% of the male roster has T-shirts, right? This.
That's correct.
Now, here's my problem right here. The Divas got one. But they are the ones who are most likely to be directly impacted by this disease. What's up with that?
All right, James, you want to reply to what Lance has said?
Well, that one is like a good issue to bring up. The fact that there's male superstars that have shirts, and as you know, there's only two divas right now that has shirts, and that's AJ Lee, the Divas champion, and Caitlyn. Those two has shirts, and I kind of agree with you that each diva should have a shirt, but at the same time, they don't have like regular shirts.
I've
You
only
know,
seen the one Diva shirt, the one Diva for the Cure shirt. That's the only one I've seen.
because you don't see AJ or Caitlyn on TV this past Monday.
I saw AJ Monday.
And she has her own shirt, as you know.
I didn't see against the Cure on the backs. Maybe
Yeah,
I'm wrong.
it has the Cure. It says Love Life.
Hello.
Ah,
And there's like and as I said, Caitlyn has her own shirt, but Caitlyn's not hasn't been on TV for a while.
yeah.
I kind of understand your disagreement, but at the same time, those is like this is just marketing thing. The WWE don't have shirts for the other divas. And that's the main thing. They just actually take the shirts that they have. Oh, I'm sorry about the background too.
Yeah.
But you know, this is just for a marketing point that these divas needs their own shirt, not just like for the Cure thing.
I ain't got no money, you know that.
You need regular shirts for themselves for like every year, for the entire year.
Right. As James tries to get into a more quieter venue, okay. I really don't see a extreme problem with it. I did listen to James and Lance on this one, and I understand that WWE is trying to put themselves out there by, you know, sponsorships and try to do right from the company, but I know most of you HWR fans are going to look back and be like, well, if they're sponsoring this and then we got other things to the side that are not being influenced in that way, I'm just going to say it like this. The WWE has partnered up with many companies to boost their business, of course. I mean, it is what Triple H would say, what's best for business, in that sort. But for me, I mean, this is going on their second or third year that the WWE has teamed up with the Susan G. Komen breast cancer awareness thing, I believe. It's going on 3 years.
No, this is their second year.
Okay, well, second year, sorry about that. Second year. And I mean, just by the shirts alone, according to Lance's thesis on this, I mean, I didn't really have a problem much with it. I mean, I did see many of the wrestlers' emblems, and not every superstar was wearing a shirt. For those who watched Monday Night Raw, not all of them wore them. Not many of the divas wore them. The only ones that did stand out who didn't wear any shirts were the commentators. That's right, the commentators. That is JBL, your wrestling god, Jerry the King Lawler, who was sponsoring an Xavier Woods shirt. Wow, Jerry the King Lawler sponsoring NXT? Oh my goodness. And Michael Cole with that Versace two-piece suit. If you guys did watch it, I mean, they weren't wearing it. I mean, you come to work, you go suggest to impress, but if you guys got good eyes, that's what we've seen.
But remember, this is basically the WWE. They're selling these shirts, and the proceeds from these shirts goes to the Cure. I mean, I don't have a problem. It's because they just want to have like their favorite wrestlers. They don't have a favorite wrestler, just pay a regular shirt, you know.
Right. And
But
now
remember, all proceeds, any shirts, most of the proceeds goes to the Cure.
Yes, dear.
all right. And now finally, James has brought to us, ladies and gentlemen, about some possible names for next year's WWE Hall of Fame. Now, we've noticed that there's some people on the list for the next year's Hall of Fame. I think I'm going to kick this one to James. James, why don't you tell us some names that you think will be in the next year's Hall of Fame?
Well, going to the news article, they say there's talks that the Ultimate Warrior can be inducted into maybe inducted to Hall of Fame as a way to the less quieter location. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's all right.
I'm eating. But there's the possibility that the Ultimate Warrior will be a possible name in next year's Hall of Fame because Helmut McMahon, actually had a meeting during WrestleMania week. No, not WrestleMania, SummerSlam weekend in LA. And then there's the also possible name of DX, the entire DX crew being in the Hall of Fame.
Okay. Well, Lance, according to the article which James wrote, do you have any names that you think should be in the Hall of Fame, or do you agree with James's list?
I agree with the list.
There's also another possible name. No, that's not on this list, but I could see Paul Bearer being on a possible one.
Paul Bear should have already been in there by now.
Yeah, with Taker.
And Kane and with Mick Foley, but I mean, we'll debate about that another time.
Bay.
Yes.
Mick went in last year.
Oh, that's right. Okay, had a brain fart there, folks. Right. Well, put me on board for this. I mean, the names that James just mentioned. I mean, hey, there's no other greater list than that.
Macho.
I mean, they finally need to put Randy Savage in the Hall of Fame. I'm sorry. I mean, and I'm going to call out his brother Lenny Poffo on this one, if you two don't mind.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry that your career as the Genius didn't pop off in the WWF. To your brother that traveled all around the world, was a famous name. And this is not to disrespect your character as the Genius, Lenny. Not to be mean. I hope you listen to this one day, but the fans know more about your brother than you. If your gimmick was not up to proper standards, and if you didn't reach out to the fans, what they're going to know you for? A jobber? You're going to job to everybody? Not to be an asshole. Yes, I said asshole. But you only solidified yourself as only being known as being the brother of the Macho Man. That's it. And he should have been in there, I'm going to say maybe a couple years ago.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we'll save that for another debate.
It's almost like if Johnny Ace would have tried to, for some reason, tried to stop, if God forbid, if something would have happened to Animal, if Johnny Ace tried to stop him from getting inducted.
Yeah.
Another name I want to add to this list.
Yeah, shoot on.
Owen Hart.
Yes, the Black Heart, the Blue Blazer.
Yeah.
The younger brother of Bret Hart. And, this has been bothering me throughout the years of professional wrestling. And I know I'm not going to get over this, and I know I probably will, but he should have been in the Hall of Fame. He should have been in there. I don't know why it's taken this long, and he hasn't even got an honorable mention.
His wife.
Well,
There
yeah.
you go. That's why it's stopping him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sad that the good things that can happen could turn out bad for the worst. And, I mean, there's other names I would have considered for the Hall of Fame, but here at Hardcore Lesson Radio, we'll probably be shot down if we say this one certain name, but, fuck it. Everybody, say it loud. 1, 2, 3. Chris Benoit. Yes, I went there. Hey,
if you don't like it, kiss our ass.
WWE, take notes. Yeah, whatever happened, happened. But he was one of the best technical wrestlers and one of the most well-known grappling and submission wrestlers there is. You could put it in your shoe, and I hope it smells reverse on your ass, because let's look at the other mentions besides Benoit. We got Benoit, we have Savage, we have the names that James had. But definitely I would put Macho, Jake the Snake, and pretty much Benoit. Those would be my top 3.
Yeah.
But, WWE being WWE, they want to be picky and fixated as they are. So, I mean, it sucks ass, but what can you do?
Yeah, they don't want to have a bad image, but yet they have a convicted rapist in their Hall of Fame.
Wow. And
Tyson?
yes. How in the world do you have a boxer named Mike Tyson? That is what Lance said. I don't want to repeat that because to some of us it's very, very personal.
Yeah.
In your Hall of Fame, but you have other talent that passed away who what made your company great and they don't get a mention? What kind of fucking world we're living in here? What is this, a Mickey Mouse organization?
Pretty much.
Those names should have been there at the time allowed. But no. Fixie and fixated is why WWE is who they are. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to say it again. Picky and fixated. You put those two together, you'll know what I mean. And now, before we go, James, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up the show? Anything at all? Wrestling-wise, anything?
No.
He says no, like Daniel Bryan's last relationship. Oh, sorry, AJ.
Well, he's doing pretty good now.
Yes, he is. Lance, is there anything else you want to bring to the program?
Well,
anything at all, whatever is in your mind.
Well, the funniest part of Raw last Monday. What did y'all think of Los Matadores?
Okay, I didn't think you were going to say anything about that, but quickly, Epico and Primo never got their tag team rematch for the belts. They went from having a sexy mamacita chica bonita que guapa eso, I'm not translating, by Rosa Mendez, to having a gimmick with Los Matadores, which means the bullfighters, with El Torito, that means little bull, and I'm surprised JBL knew that. I think this is bad for ball. I'm going to take a quote from me and James's back in the days of Blog TV. This is bad for ball. I feel like they ripped out a piece of Tito Santana's insanity and they went along with it. They really did. And, I mean, they got some cool moves, but, I mean, maybe I'm a little over the line here. Maybe people are going to think, well, wow, Will, you're very skeptical. It's not that I'm skeptical about it. It's more that this should have never happened.
They pissed somebody off.
Or they were in the doghouse or something, or they might have took a drink out of JTG's cup or looked at his Twitter, did something, and now they went from not getting their tag team rematch for the belts to this.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm on a fine line, I don't really care. I mean, they still got good moves. I see they got some new moves in their arsenal. Their finisher, it's okay, but I mean, Tito Santana would have been okay. And I'm going to take something from Twitter that James forgot to mention, and it was from Sami Zayn. He said, Olay is just a chant. Everybody has the right to chant for who they want. And for folks who don't know who Sami Zayn is, he was El Generico, for those who don't remember. And I agree with Sami on this one. You have the right to chant for who you want. Just don't take the word Olay to the extreme. And I think what Sami was saying is, if it could work for his character, and if it could work for Los Matadores, maybe it could work for somebody else. But it depends if the gimmick and everything works out as it should. But we'll leave that for another time. With that, for James, the Twitter god of HWR, Lance, the Southwestern cook of Hardcore Wrestling Radio, this is Will, known as the MVP of the base, saying, see you when we see you. And now we're going to kick it off to Rick.
Thank you, Will. Yes, I am the Shining Star, Rick Starr, and welcome to the interview segment of HWR. We would like to welcome back Jason Knight. Jason has worked from the WWE and ECW, and a former ECW TV champion. He has worked with the likes of Mick Foley, Sandman, Lex Luger, Tommy Dreamer, Mikey Whipwreck, and others. Mr. Knight, welcome to Hardcore Wrestling Radio.
Hello.
Mr. Knight, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
Now, when you first started with ECW, one of your biggest feuds was Mikey Whipwreck. Talk about that feud. What was that feud like?
Well, when I first started in ECW in 1993, I already had, pretty much almost a decade of experience in professional wrestling. And, Mikey, he came in, and, he was very green, and I noticed that, they wanted to give him a push because, they liked that, underdog type of feel that he brought in. And, they felt that, they, meaning, Paul and whomever, they felt that what better person would be than me, and I'm glad that they did because, A, I enjoyed working with Mikey, and B, I was never one of those bullying type of people that, I've been around longer, so I'm going to, take liberties, and, I've always been somebody that doesn't mind giving somebody a break in business and also doing it the right way.
I noticed that in ECW, there was a lot of wrestlers that had, there was guys like Tommy Dreamer, Taz, Sandman. They all kind of, got pushed constantly. And even after ECW closed its doors, moved on, they kind of had the reunion, and they all kept on coming to the reunion. And there were guys like you, never got that push. Why do you feel that was?
Well, I feel that all the guys that you mentioned have more than a right to be where they are because, they deserve to be there. They're, tremendous athletes and all that. But, are they the best at what they do? No, they're not. In fact, I feel that I was just much too cooperative at the time and, was willing. I had that thing where, I don't mind going out there. It's almost like back in the day when you used to go out and you would do jobs on TV, and all the guys that you mentioned, they've never done that because they always felt like they were above that, and, more power to them, but, I always felt that, I wanted to, see the world and, at any cost and wrestle and all that, and at the time it was, you go out there, you do jobs, and, these guys came out of the wrestling school and pretty much pushed into the Savoldi, this and that, all the companies. So I think it was pretty much planted into them that, from the beginning, I'm too good to do this and too good to do that, and, and of course, Paul reinforces that because when he sees that he can get something big out of you, he will give you, something like a title or a push or whatever, and, make you into a monster and say, hey, Taz, you're the baddest man, hey, Dreamer, you're the toughest guy, hey, Sandman, you're the whatever, and that type of a thing. And, he is extremely cunning and very intelligent. He knows how to push the right buttons that, makes the right robots move into, the directions that he chose for them. So that's pretty much it. But, I think they all deserve that, but I think that I should have been up there too. And, I was like way too cooperative. And you got to realize when I first went into the ECW in 1993, I was injured. It's like a few months earlier, I had a couple of back surgeries, and, I really couldn't do much.
You said your injuries was a part of it, and you said you were also very cooperative. Now, I hate to use this word because it's a part of the WWE. Do you feel that if you were had a little bit more of a ruthless aggression, do you feel that maybe that might have pushed your career a little bit in your earlier career before your injuries?
I don't know. I mean, you got to realize the business was a lot different then than, before the ruthless aggression or whatever they, it was like, let's start stiffing people, that type of a thing. Everybody worked. It was an art, and it was something that, we did Like for an example, we worked in the ring, you couldn't see that we were taking care of one another. We were outside, we got a little bit more snug and sniff or whatever, but we never hurt one another. It's like, to me, I think that it's becoming a thing where they're manipulating all these guys and girls to stiff each other. There's absolutely no need, because they say, now it's like high definition, and you really have to make it. If you're a trained professional, you're a trained professional. A stunt is a stunt, and it doesn't mean that stunt is not going to hurt like hell, and that you don't land on your back or your face or whatever. But you don't need to be going out there and chopping the fuck out of one another and kicking each other in the teeth. That is all a conveyor belt, which is designed and obviously displayed by the companies these days, that they're just it's a conveyor belt and cookie cutter, and just one after another, and everybody you got to work this way, you got to work that way, you got to be stiff, you got to be this and that. Meanwhile, most of these kids, they don't really know toughness, and its purest form. The traveling, the suffering, the this and that, all they can do is, go out there and, all that, ruthless aggression, all that, it's all bullshit.
In your, while you were in ECW, we've had a couple of other previous ECW wrestlers on, and we've talked about them working with Paul Heyman. And, some have said that, Paul Heyman was really great to work with. Some of them have said that, that he was, had problems with payments, and then others have recanted that and said, no, he's never owed me a penny. He was always great. So what's your take?
With Paul, it's a 50-50. I think that, well, I don't think I know it. It's like, at the time when most of us couldn't even get arrested, Paul took us in, and he hit a lot of our weaknesses, meaning whether you can work or not, whether you're small or big or, slow or fast, that type of a thing. And he was able to somehow magically turn everything around. And even, it's not even hide your weaknesses. He was able to exploit the weaknesses and reinforce them as your strengths. Like, for instance, if you're a fat guy drinking beer or smoking a cigarette, you can't fucking wrestle a lick, and you almost piss on yourself, on the way to the ring, and people are going to cheer for you. You become a world champion. That's exploiting, something that's kind of negative, of what we expect from an athlete from the beginning of time, I think. So he was able to do that, and the thing is that all of us, we all were behind him, and we all did more than enough to deserve a lot more than being treated the way we were, lied to and all that, and, in the end, betrayed. So, there's a very good side of Paul Heyman that, he was able to do that, but, believe me, at the time, he couldn't do that with, Rick Rude or Steve Austin or Brian Pillman, or, you know what I mean? Because those guys were at the top. They would have told him to go fuck himself. So he knew exactly, how to, Paul Heyman is like the Ed Wood, of professional wrestling. He'll take all the wannabes and the has-beens and, the maybe have-beens, and, he'll make something out of it, and that's pretty much, Paul Heyman is like the Ed Wood of professional wrestling, and it worked for him. And, he did it, and he knew that he was going to do that for a few years, and, he's going to move on to, he had a plan with Vince and WWE and all that. We're going to do this, and, we're going to bring everything home. And, that was a plan, and, he played his soul like a fiddle. He worked his soul. And that's pretty much it, I mean, it's, you get one human being that pushes the other one over the ledge, and then says, well, here, take this umbrella.
Yeah. Now, one other thing, I noticed you. I read that you had worked with the WWE. I believe you had actually worked with Lex Luger on Raw. It was probably one of your last shows. One thing that I noticed that everybody always talks about is the politics in the WWE. Have you ever, what were the politics like for you under WWE, or have you ever dealt with them?
I don't know. I never really, I guess you'd have to be one of the guys that were, super like contracted and all that. I've seen guys that were like contracts for like 2 days and then, they left, but they thought they were like, big time, because they also got worked, by thinking they were going to come in. I've seen guys come in like a storm and, leave like a, friggin' puddle of mud. And, for me, it was never, I was always very realistic about, my profession, that I'm very happy to be here. And, the money was good, and I was working for them in WCW and then, different shows and all that, and, was able, I always made money as a personal training, trainer anyway, so, that was like, it all connected itself. So it was very realistic. I never looked at, the politics to me were like stupid. It's like, I'm not on top, I'm not on the bottom, I'm somewhere in the middle. I'm like mid-carder, strong jobber, whatever. It doesn't really matter, I was very fortunate to be there, very happy to be there, and being a guy that started breaking into professional wrestling in 1977 and saw my first professional wrestling match in like the late 1960s, I knew what was going on. I knew that, unless you're, very big and very strong and very tan or very weird or very whatever, you're not going to, make it to a level of, guys like Goldberg, Hulk Hogan, Sting and, Sting being the best of the three, obviously. But, it's like, I knew all that. So I never had any high expectations. But later on, as I grew in the business and I got older and, I knew that I learned the business and, I could really wrestle and I could, build my body to what I wanted to be and, cut some great promos. I thought that, I deserved at least 50% more than, what I got. But, basically as far as, getting a really big push and everything, let me just say this. When I was starting to get into my 30s, right?
Mm-hmm.
That whole cruiserweight thing started, and I was like, wow, that would really be cool for me because now it's really starting to take off. The guys are like 5'10", they're built and, they can work. But then, by the time it really took off, I'm already 40. These guys are 20, so they're being pushed. And now you see guys in, WWE and, the other companies that are, half my size, but, they're world champions and whatever because it's a popular thing. So it was just like, the timing wasn't right. And, you can't, what are you going to do, The timing wasn't right. I was born in 63, not 73 or 83. So,
Yeah.
Just,
it kind of sucks.
It is what it is.
Yeah. It's old family saying that. We're talking with Jason Knight from ECW, who is now working with Joseph Knight, CWA. And Joseph has joined us. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me, Rick. And hey, Jason, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on? Good. Thank you.
Now, I got a question for you, for both of you guys. Now, there's always, to figure out that, there's Jason Knight and Joseph Knight. Are you guys like Irish twins or something? Or what's going on with this?
throughout at least my time in managing to currently, now people still just, I guess it's the same, almost the same first name, the capital J in our first names, and then the Knight. So I think people just confuse us both.
Fair enough. Now,
First of all, Irish were definitely not.
Top the morning to you, mi bucko.
Yeah. Well, Jason is not even my real name, but whatever. Nike is definitely not. Time ago, yeah. I'm 100% Serbian from Central Europe, Serbia, and I obviously needed to come up with a good gimmick name and learn the English language in a hurry. So when I came here back in the 70s, and I think I did a pretty good job at it.
Now, you've actually been with Joseph for quite some time. I believe you're with him with the WWO, and now you're with him with the CWA.
Yeah.
You started a group, if I'm not mistaken, Extreme Evolution a little bit, which we talked with Rock and Rebel, who was on with the show with us a couple of weeks ago. Why don't you talk about that group a little bit?
Extreme Evolution? Oh, you must be talking to Joseph.
Yeah, basically the concept, and I don't want to give anything away, it's just, I brung in Rock and Rebel and Jason as two former ECW and WCW, WWE guys who are looking to make their mark once again in wrestling. And these are two great, talented guys who are so overlooked. Anytime somebody does an ECW reunion, basically they always hire the same people. It's Tommy Dreamer, Raven, Sandman. There was more than just those guys. And, unfortunately, Jason and Rebel, who, have worked with me, and there's no controversy there, and I've, in various other, other promotions, are so overlooked. So I thought I'd bring them into the CWA, and so far, I've seen that them two have taken over. Jason is the world champion, and Rebel's there to make sure that title stays around his waist.
So it's an interesting. So it kind of just goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier about the ECW issues, where some of the guys have kind of fallen by the wayside, which I think it's a really good idea, and I think it's going to work. And now, Jason. One thing, kind of a topic that we always ask here, and I believe we asked you back in May, and you told us a real funny road story. And I got to hear it again. I think for some of the people who had missed it, you told us a funny road story between you and New Jack, and some of the guys might not have heard it. I would like to know if you could care to repeat that road story.
Okay, this one, I call the No Tell Motel, because here we are, we're going back from somewhere in Pennsylvania, and it's somewhere like deep in Pennsylvania, and Jack is driving, and he's like, man, so tired of driving. Obviously, before, during, and after matches, we had a lot of drinks, and so we're driving like a couple of hours, and he sees a light flickering. He says, I'm just, it says motel over there, and it says diner and whatever, so I'm like, great. No problem. He's like, I'm getting in the room, you get the food. Okay, no problem. He goes into the office, it's like this little creepy motel, and there's like no one there. I mean, absolutely no one, and, there's like this bed, like a king-size bed, and I'm like, okay, there's nothing. No, they have nothing, or whatever, we can sleep in the same bed, doesn't matter. We get up in the morning, a shower and all that. We get up, and it turned out to be like one of the most hardcore gay motels that you could ever imagine in that part of Pennsylvania. I mean, that's where all the dudes were going, and I mean, that's why, like, there was no one there at night because they were all busy, But in the morning, we're getting on with the coffee, and Jack figured out, I'm like, Jack, this thing. He's like, yeah, man, so he starts acting like we're together. And, you know, he arches his back and, you know, like sticks out his big ass at a time, you know, because he's a lot skinnier now. And he starts calling me Lucius, you know. And I'm like rolling the bag, and, you know, so here I am, you know, I mean, I'm walking around, I'm like in these jeans and this, you know, tank top and all jacked and friggin', you know, ripped and tan. And there's this big black dude with a bald head, you know, with old piercings and all the tattoos. And these guys are looking at us like, oh, what a perfect couple, you know. And I mean, he starts acting just like, you know, like walking around, you know, swaying around like, dude. Well, but the funny thing, the real funny thing is that it turns out that where we wanted to go in Philly was maybe like 10 minutes away. So we could have actually stayed at our hotel. It was like right over a hill that, you know, connected a highway and whatever, you know. But he's like, you know, I see a motel sign. I'm, you know, because he was really, really tired, you know. And obviously I was in no shape to drive because I was, you know, very drunk at the time, you know. And in the morning, like, everybody was out there, all those guys, and, you know, it was like the village people times 50, you know. It was really funny, you know, because, but he saw it, and he was, like, so funny. He's like, dude, you know, do you realize where we're staying? I'm like, yeah, you know, let's get out of here. You know, he's like, do you realize that, you know, we're like 10 minutes away from where we would have been, where we would have had girls and all that, you know, I mean, our, you know, chicks waiting for us and all that. And I'm like, what the you know, we were, you know. And then he's like, arches his back and he goes, come on, Lucius. You know, I don't like to wait for you. You know, it hurts my feet. And I mean, just shit like that, you know. I'm like, you just shut the fuck up. Like, what do, you know, not to do something, and guess what? The more he will.
Wow. You know, well, we have a few other guys, so they're probably going to ask you about road stories, too. But, you know, I think I'm going to pitch things over to Andy, because I think Andy is itching at the seats and ready to ask you some questions. Andy, over to you.
Hello, Jason, again. Who was your best opponent in ECW? Who was the most competitive opponent, would you say?
You know, that's kind of hard to tell. I think, in my opinion, you know, there was a lot of, like, stuff that you wouldn't see on TV. And, you know, for the longest time, like, you know, I teamed up and managed Bobby Duncan Jr. And, you know, we teamed up and, you know, had some pretty cool matches, you know, against, you know, a bunch of guys. And then PJ Credible and I, you know, there were, like, months and months and months of main events that we did in house shows and TVs, and we were like main events against Dreamer and Mikey Whipwreck. And I think those main events were pretty cool because they never got shown on TV. Very hard to find on tape, but, you know, we really gave it all we got, you know, and it gave me an opportunity to go out there and, you know, not just be some friggin' manager, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was like, in ECW, what can I tell you? Yeah, that's pretty much, you know, but, you know, I enjoyed a lot working with, you know, I'll tell you, Chris Chetty, obviously, Mikey Whipwreck, and, you know, the match that I had with Jazz, you know, I think, you know, or a couple of matches that I had with her, you know, were pretty cool, too. But, you know, I consider that more like a ha-ha, whatever.
What was it like working with Sandman? Can the guy actually work when he's sober, or can he only actually work when he's drunk? Because I don't think I've ever seen the guy in the ring when he's been sober. And to be honest, if I was a professional, I don't think I'd really want to put my life in the hands of someone that's had one too many drink, I would think.
Yeah. You know, honestly, you know, I mean, it's a great question because, you know, at the time you got to realize that, you know, like, you know, Simon and I are like about the same age. I may be a year older or so, right? So, one of the first guys that I met over there, and I've always been a drinker. You know, I'm European. I mean, I'm not a drunk alcoholic, whatever, but I'm a drinker. You know, I mean, that's,
yeah.
You know, I train, I blah, 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 and then I drink, you know, and not harm anyone. He's like that, too. And we kind of met like that, and like, you know, what do you want to do? You want to smoke this joint? I'm like, well, I don't really smoke. I'll take a couple of tokes. You know, well, do you want a beer? Well, I'll have a beer, you know. Hey, would you like some vodka? Sure, I'll have some vodka. Whatever, you know, that type of thing. So it was never really an issue that we were unsafe to one another, because I think we were both in the same boat, you know. It's not the Sandman, you know. You got to realize what the Sandman did, or Scott Hall, or this one, or that one coming out. That's not the first time, you know. It's just, you know, a lot of people, they hide it, or, you know, a lot of, you don't see it on videotape. So it's not the first time that, you know, someone did that. And, you know, how was it? I mean, it was like working, because, you know, I was just as drunk as he was, you know.
Do you think Sandman got where he was in his career because of the drunken, for the want of a better term, gimmick that he had all the time? Do you think his gimmick outsold his wrestling? Because looking at it from like a wrestling fan, I really didn't see the guy as a wrestler. He was just a drunk that could have a brawl in the ring. To me, he was not entertaining as a wrestler. He was just a piss artist in the ring that you could laugh at.
Exactly. I mean, you know, he's someone you can laugh at or relate to, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, here he goes. It was a baby face, right? And he had like a surfer outfit on.
Yeah.
And years before that, he had a really good build, you know, because he's like 6'4", and he had a small waist and a, you know, tan and, you know, good-looking guy and all that. And then, you know, he kind of let himself go. And so, you know, he got really fat and what have you. So and actually I had my first feud with him, and it was like, you know, the funny thing, me calling him fat and, you know, funny looking and trying to hit on his wife and blah, 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 and all that. But back then, you know, he was like you know, the good guy. And all of a sudden, when Paul Heyman came in, it was like, there goes the end of the Sandman being a good guy, because everyone's going to laugh at you. You know, you're just a pot-belly guy that comes up, and that's when they, you know, turned that whole thing around. Because if you look at the whole demographic and everything, you know, I mean, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and, you know, that part of Philly, what it brings. And at that time, you know, it was good timing, because everybody started hating, like WCW. Started having like Johnny B. Bad, you know, with shooting out the thing, and WWE with, you know, the clowns and stuff like that. So it was a very, very good timing to turn the thing around, and, you know, turn this guy into a badass, and you know, that kid committed that crime with desecrating automobiles in Singapore. So everything, you know, was like almost like the stars aligned, you know, for the Sandman and Tommy Dreamer, I must say.
Do you think wrestling is the same as it was when you first got into it, or do you think it's more storyline driven these days?
You know, how can I put it without, because, you know, first of all, it's something that I will protect and love for the rest of my life, but I'm not going to be an idiot and underexpose it, because it's so overexposed, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, if someone comes up to me and says, hey, I think you're blah, 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 you know, well, then, you know, if I can pull a Dr. D on him, I will, you know. If I can't, I'll stab him in the fucking back, you know. You know, that's how I feel about it. I feel very strongly about it. But then, you know, I can't really, you know, when someone comes up to me and says, you know, like my mother, for instance, she said, you know, I was flipping through channels, and I saw Paul Heyman, you know, praying to God, and then CM Punk came and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it has nothing to do with professional wrestling. I have to say, yeah, I saw the same thing, and I agree. You know, let me just put it this way. Everybody that is in WWE or TNA or, you know, wherever, they deserve to be there, because they're tremendous athletes. They deserve to be there. They look great. They take care of themselves and all that. Now, you know, that's like 96%, right?
Yeah.
And now that and now we start cutting it down. What is the percentage of promos? Very little, maybe 40%, if lucky, right?
Yeah.
And I'm being kind. What is the psychology percent? 12%, and and then it keeps going down and down and down like that. So unfortunately, the fans are being almost like re-educated into watching a Matrix movie that doesn't make any sense. So you're not watching a Hitchcock movie. You're watching, some sci-fi film that has a zombie biting off a guy's head, just for the shock value, and that's what wrestling has become, just for shock value. So it's not good professional wrestling. No, it's not good. I'm sorry, it's not. Athleticism, yes. Acrobatics, 100%, and all that. Promos, horrible. They're horrible. Every one of them. They're unbelievable. They're not believable. I don't believe them. I don't believe these young guys that they come out there, And plus, a lot of them, they're way too young, When I grew up, I watched, Blackjack Mulligan and Dick Slater and Dusty and Kevin Sullivan and those guys. I believe that, if they came after me, they're going to kick my ass,
Yeah.
If you're 20 years old and you're 300 pounds of pure muscle, what experience do you have fighting in bars? None. So unless I let you powerbomb me, and that's not going to happen. I mean, it all goes back, to what you're asking, professional wrestling today and yesterday. It's, it's like living on, you lived on one planet, now you live on another, and they're like millions of miles away, and it's almost like you'll never get back there. That's how I feel it is.
Yeah, it seems to have lost its way. Can you explain to the listeners how you use psychology in a match? How you sort of use it to get the crowd on your side or against you? Can you just explain a little more how psychology comes into the wrestling industry? Because it is something that a lot of wrestlers do say. It's something, if you don't know how to use the psychology of wrestling, you'll never really make a big star.
I think, and I know that I'm right, without, trying to be a dickhead about it, but, I don't, it's like when I go somewhere, because I work a lot of, independent shows, they're like, are you working face or heel? I'm like, we don't know that. Don't worry about it. Once we go through those doors, we'll see, because it's like, if it's like New York or South Philly, blah, 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 obviously I'm going to be the face, even though if I was the worst bad guy, because that's what they're used to. If I go somewhere in, Raleigh, North Carolina, obviously they're going to hate me because they like that kid with a mullet,
Yeah.
and the lack of a tan, because, that's the way it is. So, to me, it's, you got to feel it out. I mean, you can always, and don't go, about the gimmicks so much, because that's all, to me, the art of wrestling is long gone. It's like there are no more Joel Dukes and Killer Cox and Dusties and Kevin Sullivans and guys like that. And those guys actually had gimmicks, but they never gave them away. The problem is that, a wrestler these days wants to put himself forward by having another occupation. And a wrestler should never have another occupation. I shouldn't be a mechanic or a plumber or a doctor or executive or whatever, But, I can think you out, or overthink you, or I'll think you, like an executive. I'm a doctor of this, and, the thing is, once they started putting outfits on professional wrestlers back like 20 years ago, that's where the whole started going downhill. Because, you got a guy, wearing a suit and a tie and he's wrestling. You have a guy wearing a an outfit of a dentist and all that. It all really, it systematically and slowly just started ruining the business. Wrestlers need to be wrestlers. You come in your outfit, you take your outfit off, you got your trunks, you got your whatever, it could be, whatever it is, but, you go out there and you kick ass and you wrestle.
And one question before I go. I was looking on the internet and I found that they gave you the nickname, the title, the world's sexiest man. Is that before they actually saw my Facebook profile? Because obviously I would have got that title, but how did they come up with the world's sexiest man? Or
well, it wasn't that. It was it's not even that. It was the sexiest man on earth. It was Paul Heyman's thing, because to make the long story short, I had that, Paul wanted to hire me, and like, can I have a match? I said, well, I can have a match. I had a surgery like 3 months ago, right?
Yep.
Back, like, well, blah, 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 so, okay. So now I can't really wrestle on a regular basis. Like, well, we're going to make it another, like Rick Martel, and I'm going to call you the sexiest man on earth, Jason. You're going to be a manager, and then, once you're through managing, you can wrestle and blah, 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 this and that, so that's how that came about. And I didn't, I thought it was like cute in the beginning, and it was fun, but then I really started hating it, and I wanted out of it so badly.
Round to Will with a few more questions, I think it is, next.
Hello again, Jason. How's it going?
Good, thank you.
One question I wanted to ask you is, I was reading upon your finishing move, the Night Driver. It's a sit-out inverted suplex slam. My question is, did you come up with the name Night Driver, or did you have any help with the name for your finishing move?
No, I think it was me. I remember it was like back in the 90s. I was like, what can I do that looks kind of dangerous, but it's really not. And also, I always, when I come up with like finishes, I do it in a way where it's believable. So it's like I'm not picking up like a 350-pound guy on my shoulder and then doing, something that's unbelievable. And I figure, anybody can go straight up and, come down their belly and, that type of a thing. And I have other finishes like that where I don't have to put in the effort of picking up somebody that weighs like 400 pounds and, risk injuring them or me, that type of a thing. Like, I would very much hate, I was told BJ Credible, I told him, I said, I would really hate to have that, that pile driver as a finish, because, what if it's some, fat guy, you can't get, your arms around him, I don't want to, draw somebody on his face like that. So, believe it or not, I even have a clothesline as my finish. But, it's like a different type of, if you go to that CWA match that I had, the last time with, what's his name?
With the Atomic Dog.
Atomic Dog, yeah. And the finish looks perfect because, I low the arm, and all that, and I hit him with that clothesline. You believe that, that it's possible. Because what am I going to do to him, pick him up for a fucking muscle driver? And he weighs like, and we were doing like the weigh-ins, which is funny. And he's like, Jason, so what do you weigh? I'm like, well, I'll do my legitimate weight, like 240. And he goes, well, I'll do my legitimate weight, like 345. I'm like, are you really 340? He goes, yeah. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not fucking picking you up for anything.
If I could chime in real quick, the whole finish with Jason loading up his elbow pad and then hitting the dog with it, it made me laugh backstage, because you're looking at the fans and they actually believe this finisher. They actually got into it, and they booed Jason like crazy. It reminded me of old classic finishes, where the fans saw it, him loading it up, and they were like, "Oh, look, referee, he's got something in his elbow pad," and bam, and the crowd went like you thought Jason was going to get lynched.
Yeah, and the whole thing is, where I stand like, my back to him, and I'm just looking at him because I want to take that, big run, and hit the ropes and, get that propulsion. I mean, that's all part of psychology, honestly. It's like, you've got to use the arena, the fans, yourself, your feet, your friggin' eyebrows, your everything, in this business in order to get over, and, it's not just, the lights and the music and, I mean, you really have to, you got to go back to basics in order to save the business, honestly.
And to go back on what the topic you were talking about regarding like the how to play the crowd, one thing I was talking to Jason backstage, and we were actually in the hallway after the show, and this fan came up to us, was a little kid, Jason, remember, and he said, "You cheated." And he actually, it was fans actually believed it.
Yeah, actually, I had adults that came up to me, and I actually had like these girls that came up to me and said, that, "Oh my gosh, we saw you and you look so nice and, you're nice looking, blah, 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 whatever, we thought you were gonna, and then you cheated, you loaded your arm." And I'm like, yeah, okay. And, and Joseph, remember what I showed you, what I loaded my arm with?
And
it was like, it takes that, and it just takes that thing where, people see it. And it's that, psychological part. It made me, like I said, it made me a heel, for them.
Powerful suggestion.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but there are a lot of places where you go and you do that, you'd be the biggest baby face. Because, depending on, what kind of a product you're trying to push. You go to Philly, you hit somebody with a screwdriver, you're like the best, their best friend,
It's mostly what's missing is the kayfabe and the believability. And unfortunately, fans have gotten to that point. I'm sorry to be cutting in. Fans have been seen, been shoved everything that the WWE has to offer, and there's no believability.
I don't think it's even the WWE, to be honest with you. I think, I think it's the internet. They hate to say it. I mean, we've talked about this on the show many times. They say, I just say that's what it is. It's the end of the day. I think internet killed wrestling. And I think Andy would agree. I think, if Billy was here, who is, again, out on personal issues, would agree. Once that curtain was open and drawn back and seen what's going on, you have no choice but to kind of cheer for your favorite star, whether he's a heel or a face.
And the thing is believability. And with the fans that we had, they actually, when that moment where the ref went down, Jason's pulling out something out of his boot and loading up his elbow pad, those fans got heated.
Will, I believe you have some more questions?
Yes, I do. I think Joe got his shine on. Jason, I also understand that you made your TNA debut on June 11, 2003 with your tag team partner, CB Kane, in which you guys fought Mike Sanders and Sonny Siaki. Can you tell us how was it when you debuted at TNA? Was the environment good?
That thing, it was horrible. I mean, unfortunately, I was supposed to go there because it was supposed to be like, my tryout. I was like, okay, tryout. I've got 30 years in business, or try it. Doesn't matter, whatever, I'll do it. And And then, I was told that I should bring one of my students, because I had a wrestling school at the time, and, we were going to have a match. And then I get there, so it's not going to be that, and I'm teaming up with, some guy from Florida, and with Mike Sanders and Sonny Siaki, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, those guys were, what shocked me was everybody wanted to get in a ring and talk about what we're going to do. And it was okay, whatever. So, needless to say, it was a horrible experience because both those guys were very, disrespectful. They're asking me, do you know how to do an arm drag? And I'm like, thinking to myself, kid, an arm drag was discovered way before you were born. It's but, whatever. And we go in a ring, and I don't know, have you ever seen the match?
I don't really recall the match.
Well, yeah, you didn't see it because what happens is Sonny Siaki locks up with this, poor bastard and shoots him off and knocks him out with a clothesline, because I guess he wanted to prove something. And then I just got back in the ring and I was like, okay, I kind of smiled at him I see the way it's going to be. And then I finished the whole match, So it was an experience. It was an unprofessional act, from these guys that are supposed to be from all these schools. And, I thought, to me, at that time, that NWA TNA, I was like, I never went back there.
One last question, Jason, and I'm going to pass it back to Rick. TNA, as of right now, many of us here at HWR think that TNA is not going to last that long. So, can you tell us your thoughts? Do you like TNA right now, or do you think it's going to fall faster than the Titanic?
Yeah, I don't know, because, honestly, I've not watched wrestling on TV in many years. And, when I do, I turn off for a little while, and then I see something stupid, and I just, I change the channel. And as much as I love watching professional wrestling, and I still do, and I thank the YouTube for, stuff that I can watch. But, these things, I don't watch it. It's horrible. I don't know what's going on. Friends of mine, call me and say, oh, did you hear about this one, that one, or that one, this one, these names. I'm like, I don't know. I don't watch professional wrestling on TV anymore, and, I'm in long unless something changes drastically. And honestly, as much as I hate to say this because I want to see the workers and the boys prosper, but I really hope that the companies fall on their asses because they're they're a bunch of fucking Hitlers and assholes.
Wow.
That just made my night.
Damn.
All right, thank you, Jason. It was nice to talk to you, and best wishes. I'm going to hand it back to Rick, so you have a good night.
Jason, how you doing? Listen, real quick question. While he was talking about TNA, a question that we've been really talking about. TNA's now back to the traditional four-sided ring. When you wrestled with TNA, did you wrestle in the six-sided ring, or did you wrestle in the four-sided ring?
No, it's four-sided, thank God, because, that thing to me was, ridiculous.
Really?
It was come on, please. I mean, I can understand, a company somewhere saying we're going to do the six-sided or whatever, and that's one company. But, it shouldn't be. I think, I like to keep that tradition going. And, it's like, that meat and potatoes thing. It's like, let's do, the ring is a ring. And, to me, when they started doing that, quite frankly, I think that's when they started going down the hill. Yeah.
Fair enough. Now, before we go, we would love to hear, you said you have 1,000 road stories. We would love to hear you tell us another great road story.
Well, let me, just tell you about this road story, which involves, some education as far as, how to treat people, right? Back in the early 90s, I guess, when I was still doing jobs for WCW, right? And I worked with, Mark Callis, he's the your undertaking and all that, you know. And at that time, Dutch Mantell worked over there, you know. And he was always like pissed off for some reason, whatever, you know. And I went to, you know, the bar of the hotel where I was staying at, and Paul Heyman was there, and Mark was there, and Dutch Mantell was there, you know. And I remember, you know, Paul taunting me. He goes, "Hey, go to Dutch and, you know, slap him on the shoulder." I'm like, yeah, whatever, you know. But, you know, in any case, you know, the whole story was like, you know, Dutch Mantell, you know, he's sitting there by himself. I'll never forget that, you know. And this was like literal like late 80s, early 90s, right? You know, probably late 80s, like 88, 89. And I'm sitting there in Dutch Mantell, and, you know, I'm sitting at like a table, and he says to me, "Jason." And I look at him, I'm like, "Yes." You know? So I just want to tell you something. And he tells me, you know, you're a good wrestler, you know, a very nice looking kid, and blah, 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 and you're going to attract a lot of girls. Make sure you don't treat any of them in a way where, you know, they're going to be offended, because you never know where you're going to meet someone, you know. Now, you know, through all this time, I'm like, you know, sleeping with all these girls that are like, you know, in Atlanta, like they were like the best of the strippers. They were all my girlfriends, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" You know. And he's like, "Jason, just make sure, you know, you don't do that. You know, be nice to all the girls." Okay. So another couple of days goes by, and these two chicks come around. You know, they're like nerdy or whatever, and I'm really cool and nice to them. And, you know, we're hanging out and doing the whole thing, just like, you know, hanging out, drinking, and, you know, "Hey, you want to stay, Mario? You can, blah, blah, blah." I'm not being mean. I'm not saying get the fuck out, right? You know, they had too much to drink. They can't drive back home. And I look in, you know, my bag. My plane ticket is gone. My plane
Oh, shit.
Gone. Yeah. I mean, I actually, you know, now, I lost my plane ticket in one of the cities before that, because I fucked up. You know, I rented a car and I put the plane ticket, you know, in the, you know, the side console, you know, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So, you know, and one of the girls nerdy girls, that I let him stay in my room, you know, nothing went on, whatever like that, you know, but I was really cool, you know, and on top of that, if I didn't let him stay there, I could have had a couple of strippers in my room and really had a good time. Because, well, look, you know, in Jacksonville or wherever, you know, I can take you there with my car, and my cousin, she works for blah, 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 that airline, you know. She will definitely put you on a plane for that, because those are the codes or whatever the hell it is. And I'm like, you know. And actually, you know, it happened because, you know, I never forget, you know, it was like a lesson that I learned, you know, from Dutch Mantell. And, you know, it was like, you know, always be good to all these girls. He's like, you know, yeah, you know, you're a good-looking kid, blah, 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 and this and that. He's like, be very, very careful, you know, how you treat people, because you never know where you're going to, you know, need them. And at that time, it was like, yeah, you know, I guess, you know, whatever. And I couldn't believe that, like, a few days later, I meet these two nerdy girls that I didn't, you know, they just got too drunk to drive home. And I was like, you know, I have a whole, you know, my room's over there, and you have, you know, two beds you sleep on. You know, I didn't want to touch them, you know. But, you know, one of them remembered and said, you know, you helped me out, and, you know, I'm going to help you out now. And drove all the way.
Wow.
But, you know, other songs, yeah, you know, we were like, you know, rock stars, you know, just like Molly Crew or whatever, you know, the girls, they helped us out, you know, I mean, you know,
awesome.
It's not a big deal, because, you know, we had to do what we had to do. They
yeah.
You know, they helped us out, and, you know, they were a bunch of great people.
Well, again, we want to thank you for coming on, and, you know, right now, do you have anything coming up in the recent future?
Yes, October 6th in Long Island, New York. We have that Mario Tedesco tribute show, and the proceeds go to the Cole Foundation. So just I would like to say go on my Facebook, but somebody hacked it. So
that's thanks. Well, if you want, you can have Joe send me the details, and I'll be gladly to post it on our Facebook page.
I would like that if Joe would do that.
Absolutely.
I'll definitely do that. I'll forward you all the information.
All right, and we're gonna, thank you for, again coming on, and you're always welcome to come on. It's always a pleasure having you.
Okay, thank you so much.
And thank you. You have a great night.
Good night.
Joe, again, I want to thank you as always for coming on. Joe, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you at?
They can find me on ClassicWrestlingAssociation.com. You can also find me on Facebook on the Joseph Knight, and also Classic Wrestling Association on Facebook.
Okay. Andy, where can everyone find you?
www.stokehaunted.com.
And Will, where can everybody find you at?
Of course, I'll be at Hardcore Wrestling Radio writing up everything from articles to posting funny pictures and anything else is just uncivilized. I'm taking a break from Skip right now because we're in the middle of NFL season.
All right. And we would like to thank James and Will for coming on. We know they didn't get a chance to ask any questions, but they were over doing the news. So, Lance, where can people find you?
YouTube.com/LanceMossTV. Do album reviews, NASCAR reviews, a little bit of wrestling reviews, cooking videos, Q&As, and whatever else pops into my head.
And I'm not sure if James is with us, but I always want to thank James for helping out with the news. And James, I believe he's with Instagive. Is he still with Instagive, James? Will?
Yeah, he is.
Okay, why don't you give him his details?
At www.instagive.tv/fatboy504.
All right, and of course, Andy, you can find us at Hardcore Wrestling Radio on our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/Hardcore Wrestling Radio. And anytime you want to listen to our shows, head on over to Spreaker.com/HWR Media. And if there's a past shows you want to go to, head on over to our YouTube page. That's youtube.com/HWR Show. Make sure you like us. Make sure you hit the follow button. So for everyone here, I'm the Shine Star Rex Star saying we'll see you when we see you. Thank you for listening to this edition of Hardcore Wrestling Radio. Be sure to follow us on our pages, facebook.com/Hardcore Wrestling Radio and Spreaker.com/HWR Media, and also on youtube.com/HWR Show. Until the next time, this is Rick Starr saying see you when we see you.